Jonathan's interest in sacred geometry stems from his childhood fascination and adoration of the exquisite beauty and intrinsic order of natural forms, particularly things like pine cones, seashells, flower patterns, etc. Jonathan was born in New Zealand, and he was very fortunate to enjoy the natural beauty of New Zealand. It was in his teen years that he became interested in metaphysics, mysticism, and ancient schools of initiation. Jonathan was a bit of a misfit at school, he writes, and would take every opportunity to escape the classroom and wander the wilderness. The school was next to a mountain range, so that made for nice exploring. The great outdoors was his classroom, and the wisdom of nature was his teacher. Every day was a new adventure as he blazed his own trails of exploration. At the age of 21, he began his vast overseas travels and lived in different countries right throughout the world. He was especially fascinated with ancient civilizations and their incredible structures, such as pyramids, temples, monuments, etc., and how they were designed to mirror aspects of universal order. He figured that if the architects of these amazing structures placed so much importance in geometric cosmology, it was worth him investigating. He spent 5 years with the United Nations Field Service, living in the Middle East in countries such as Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, and Israel. He loved visiting the ancient sites, most especially the pyramids in Egypt. In 1986, it became clear that sacred geometry and universal order was his life path, so he resigned his position with the United Nations and since then has spent the last 30 years in study, experience, and sharing of sacred geometry as a tool for higher consciousness. As the world is rapidly changing and it can be quite difficult to know what is real and what's not, much of what you see is an illusion. It can be very comforting, therefore, to experience universal truths based on pure mathematical principles. The principles are encapsulated in the shapes, patterns, and forms of sacred geometry. When we consciously engage with these geometries, we open ourselves up to the greater whole and more of who we truly are. Jonathan Quinton is a geometric cosmologist and transcendental artist. So welcome, Jonathan. It's a wonderful bio, so thank you.
Lovely to be here, thank you. I need to update that bio. It said 30 years, but it's now coming on 37.
Time flies, doesn't it?
It does.
It certainly does. Okay, I'll hand over to you now. Thank you.
Cosmography is the universal language of shape, pattern, and form, and it's based on a circle. The circle symbolizes the cosmic womb, source of undifferentiated potential. Within the circle exists in the pre-manifest state with thousands, millions of stars and triangles and rhomboids and pentagons and hexagons and hexagrams and octograms and so forth, and all in perfect order, all perfectly connecting one to the other, and all aligned to a higher order. To activate this order, we use numbers. Number represents identity and center and central, identity point, to duality and polarity. Three divisions of the circle brings us the equilateral triangle. Four uniform divisions of the circle creates the square, the quadrilateral. And 5 divisions creates the pentagon. These are known as the primary shapes, which make secondary shapes. The triangle extrapolates into 2 triangles, upright and inverted, creating the hexagram. And the points of the hexagram, when joined, make the hexagon. A double square, horizontal and diagonal, makes the octagram. And joining the points of the octagram makes the octagon. A double pentagon makes the decagon and decagram. So these are the building blocks of the cosmos in a sense. These are mathematical programs. They are jam-packed with mathematical dynamics such as interangular relationships, vectors, vertices, radials, meridians, perimeters, parameters, ratios, proportions, root powers, trajectories, fractalization, truncations. Among them, infinite possibilities are possible. As an example, let's take the pentagon and divide it up into other sections that are innate within it. It begins with the pentagon itself and then joining the opposite angles with straight lines that produces a 5-pointed pentagram, which has 5 isosceles triangles, golden proportioned isosceles triangles, as well as 5 long base, short side isosceles triangles. The first one is short base, long side. And when we extrapolate, we get the decagon. And rhomboids, just forming the space between 2 pentagram stars, the wide-based rhomboid, and forming the space between 4 pentagons, a narrow-based rhomboid. Each of these shapes is a fractal that can contain infinite patterns within. We'll use the 3, the pentagon, pentagram and the decagon as examples. They hold an energy, a presence that is resonant to the shapes that we just saw divided from the pentagon. In the spaces between them, the triangles and rhomboids, and decagons and decagrams, and pentagons and pentagrams. all different patterns, and all aligned to a state of higher order, of transcendental order. And it gives us a tangible form, a tangible experience of what is there in potential. And that is everything, basically, because this is a universal language and it governs multiple realms of existence and size and distance. These contain the mathematical properties that are found in the self-organizing forces of nature. And this is another form. This is a natural phenomenon. This is based on pure mathematical principles. It's science. Yet, it's more than that. There's something else there. It's quite profound and gentle and beautiful and transcendental. And what does it all mean? No one knows. I don't know. I can't know. I can only make assumptions and develop definitions, and I'll share that with you. .618 is the common factor between everything and was known as the golden number. And when the golden number is applied to the golden formula, which is A plus B equals C, is similar to B plus C equals D. Each letter represents a function, and in this case, A the past, B the present, C the future, and D continuation. They can also be represented by numbers. And only two numbers are required to complete that formula, because you can extrapolate from those two, the other two numbers. The lower number represents the past, the higher the present. And let's choose the number 9 and 15. And apply it to the golden formula. A plus B, 9 plus 15 equals 24, which is similar to 15 and 24 equals, and it gives us a new number, 39. It's a progression. There's a couple of numbers in there that are repeated, 15 and 24 repeated twice, so we only take one of them, one set of them, and continue with this progression of adding the past with the present to make the future. And then divide these numbers, this progression, this set of numbers, into pairs and arrange them into columns, 2 columns, dividing the lower numbers into the higher numbers. And very soon they find their way to the golden number, 1.618. Here's another example, 4 and 7. And on we go, adding the past with the present to make the future, just like nature does. Dividing the lower numbers into the higher numbers of each pair. Again, we find our way back to the golden number. One more example, 27 and 144. Adding the past to the present to make the future, and continuing. Dividing and each finding its way, moving towards 1.618. let's use this segment of the Fibonacci series, starting basically at the beginning. And the only place we can start at is at 1. And we give it length, and it gets off to a really slow start. I mean, with those other numbers, they got to 1.618 almost immediately. But this is very sluggish and slow in beginning, and that is the way of nature, is that in the rudimentary forms of development, the beginning stages bear hardly any resemblance to the mature form. Okay, we started at the beginning. Let's move along higher into the higher numbers of Fibonacci. And again, express it through length. And this time we're going to measure the golden number to 6 decimal places. Before it was 3 and now it's 6 decimal places of precision. And if we take those numbers and those lengths, and just like the others, we divide them into pairs and into columns, and divide the lower numbers into the higher numbers, then we get to 1.618 much more quickly. It's important to understand that there's a difference between the template and how it eventually manifests into the 3D physical plane. But underlying each individual form, there's an average or an alignment, and every natural form has these Fibonacci numbers in, but none as exquisitely as the human form, as shown in Leonardo's Vitruvian Man, how each part of the human form is in golden proportion to another part of the form, often and mostly next to it, but not always. And the face, and again, this is the template, and we all come off that template, and there's tall ones and short ones and fat ones and skinny ones and all sorts, every kind you can imagine, but they all come from the Fibonacci template, and it usually plays out accordingly. In philosophical geometry then, the circle often symbolizes the spiritual plane and the square the physical plane. And when the two are united, it's called the squaring of the circle. And it was this symbol that Da Vinci used, well, not this symbol, because he shifted the square, to show how when the legs are together and the arms are horizontal, the tips of the fingers touch the square, and when they are extended, the tips of the fingers touch the circle. And this was to symbolize that we are united, heaven and earth united, even down to the DNA is organized by Fibonacci numbers. And the cross section of a tupula of the DNA molecule is found to be decagonal. is actually a decagram. And we've seen how that is just a natural embodiment of the golden number. There's a higher order to be found beyond the 3D physical, and it can be found further along the Fibonacci series. So far, we've been looking at nature's geometry in the 3D manifest world. Now we're going to step into universal geometry. Nature's is manifest, universal pre-manifest, and on it goes. So far we've gotten up to 1597 in the Fibonacci series. Let's move along even further, up to 40 places from the beginning. And the last number there is the 40th placement from the beginning. And choose. Select a group here, do the same thing. Form them into columns and divide the lower numbers into higher numbers and extrapolate them as lengths. And this time we're going to measure it to 10 decimal points of precision, 10 decimal places. And when we take those numbers and do the same thing, the numbers show that we have the perfect scale, the golden number carried to 10 decimal places. Let's take it beyond the veil. Here it is, the golden scale. We've already seen that the human form is an embodiment of the golden scale. But what's the relationship between that and this? A circle divided and divided and divided again, making 3 pentagram stars, one within the other, itself within a pentagon, itself within a circle. What does that have in relation to what you see on the left? And that is proportional similarity. It's the same, not in this expression, in this geometric expression. The difference is that it is precision, or it's as precise as we can get technology to make it. Whereas on the left, it's imprecise. And it can be arranged in a different fashion, creating the golden rectangle, squares containing the spiral, the golden spiral. And the spiral is the most common shape in nature. It, at the same time, embodies 2 opposing forces. It's at the same time moving towards contraction and out towards expansion. Such is the nature of the universe. This is the geometry. These are some of the letters of the alphabet of creation, but they're the primary letters. They're taken from the primary shapes from the circle, blending it with the golden number, the golden proportion. Visualization, the language of light. Think of the sleeping state. You're sleeping, you're thinking about your pet turtle, and the image in your dream, the turtle in your dream, is the same as the pet turtle laying next to you, but your eyes are closed. How can that be? You don't see with your eyes, you see with your mind. This is the eye and the parts of the eye. And if there was a bluebird in your view, you don't see the bird. You don't see with your eyes, you don't see the bluebird in front of you. Well, how can you? It's 99.999% space, for one thing. But aside from that, that's not the way it works. How it works is an external source of light. In this example, the sun. It radiates until it hits a wall of density, and it bounces off that density, but this time, this reflected light now carries information about the shape and form and all the features of whatever it was that it bounced off. And these light rays, these vibrations, these light cycles pass through the cornea, the pupil, the iris, and onto the lens, where there is a reflection of the bird is laid upon the lens, inverted, and this is projected to the back of the eye, the retina. The retina is a membrane containing millions of light-sensitive nerve endings, and they respond to the light cast upon them. They respond by pulsating and generating these neuroelectric charges that pass along the optical nerve and through the geniculate nucleus and on to the back of the brain, the occipital lobe, and this is where the information is processed and reconstituted. It works with everything. Just imagine that geometry is in your view, and you are recreating this geometry in your mind. So the circle, everything we see here, these are the shapes. Every shape is a fractal. It can contain endless, infinite number of smaller shapes within it, all perfectly connected one to the other, all perfectly aligned to a higher order. Sacred geometry is a gateway to this order. Sacred geometry is resonant with this order, with cosmos and symbiosis and oneness. What do they represent? I mentioned earlier, I don't know, but I'm sharing my thoughts and my experience, verging on 40 years now. I started even before. And here are my thoughts, here are my definitions. How I see these are as continuous. timeless, universal actions that can only be known to us through geometry. They symbolize many things, including assimilation, balance, coherence, equilibrium, fractals, harmony, interconnectivity, optimization, sustainability, symbiosis, symmetry, synergy, transformation, unity. I think of them philosophically in different ways. I think of them as algorithms emanating from the source of creation. Other times I think of them as musical scores of the celestial symphonies resonating to mathematical truths of the creation. This is something that where the most powerful expression of geometry, of these geometries that you are looking, the most powerful expression of them is in the most powerful space in the universe, and that is in your cranium, inside your head as you're watching this. Your eyes aren't seeing it. I don't want to go through all of that again, but it's your mind, in your mind's eye. You are simulating these geometries in your consciousness, and in doing so, your brain, your mind that is doing this is applying the mathematical principles in order to make these shapes of this size and at this angle connected to this other part. Your mind is doing all of that, is applying everything necessary for that. And your mind is connecting. And it's a mutually beneficial relationship between these geometries and the observer. Because this geometry that you are seeing, that is endless, barely gets a chance to be seen because it exists pre-manifestation in the state of potential. It exists in the circle, but needs to be actualized by the mathematician, by the geometer, who does that through numbers, dividing the circle by numbers into different systems, different triangular, hexangular, pentangular, different systems of circular division. As this streams through your consciousness, streaming into your consciousness, bringing these healthy working systems into your awareness, rejuvenating. Geometry is like visual vitamins, sustenance for the soul. What it does is, as I said, it's a mutually beneficial experience, because these geometries bring so much to us. They're a portal through which we can experience this higher order. It can also provide a sanctuary to us, a place to come to be away from the turmoil that surrounds us, and the fear and the danger. Everything that happens is happening at an increasing rate. Geometry can offer a sanctuary, the eye in the storm, because this is timeless. This is individual. This is separate of chaos, of space, of time, even of the creation. If you think about it, everything in creation is geometrically organized one way or another. In order for that to occur as it's developing, it needs the geometry, it needs the blueprint. The blueprint was there first. The blueprint doesn't need anything, doesn't need an observer, doesn't need anything to exist in potential. That when it does get the attention, the consciousness of the observer, beneficially mutual, everything it brings to you, you give it an existence. It's existing in your cranium. In your cranium there's this dance between self and non-self. And these geometries, musical scores of a celestial orchestra. Sacred geometry is a universal language. It describes the inner workings of nature. It is a natural sanction that unites all forms of life. Proportional similarity, the golden thread, the golden number. It works on microbes, plants, animals, and humans to the motions of planets and the stars. It shows how diverse and contrasting elements can be organized into a harmonious whole while still preserving their uniqueness. It symbolizes the relationship of form, movement, space, and time. As we look at this, consider universal intelligence has designed itself into each one of us. Our human form is established upon the same set of principles found on all levels of creation. We are made from the same elements as the rest of the cosmos. Every atom in your body was at one point in the molten center of a star. We are spiritual beings mingling with dust from the earth in order to have a human experience. We are the epitome of the evolutionary cycle. We include within us the essence of that which has gone before us. We are a fractal hologram of a multi-dimensional universe, where the whole is reflected in the part. As Rumi put it, you are not a drop in the ocean, but the entire ocean in a drop. Since the point of conception is a fertilized egg, you contained all the information required for the development of your physical form. The miracle of life unfolded in your cells and were nourished by nutrients supplied by the earth. Every cell contains the information required to work in unison with millions of other cells in developing and maintaining the physical form. Sacred geometry provides the tools for us to connect to this inner intelligence. The shapes and forms are keys that can help us unlock the potential that lies within us. And the circle is an interface through which we can explore inner space.